respect everyone's time, and I want to thank all of our panel members for being here today. So we have Carmen, Chip, Dave, and Ali here with us tonight to share all of their expertise. I want to welcome them this evening and welcome all of you. They bring a variety of interviewing tips to you today, tips and secrets and experiences ranging from just landing interviews and starting their first jobs to over 30 years of experience. So we have a really great panel here with us tonight, and I look forward to everything that we have to learn from them. Today, I do want to share with you a couple things before we get started here. So let me see here. I'm going to share my screen with you. Rick and I were just talking about this professional or some of these things that we want to share with you about Shape PA. Were you able to see my screen there? It's been a while since I've
not yet.
Let me pull that up here. Sharing my screen. Okay, here's where we want to be.
There it is.
Okay. Oh, and there it went.
Oh, there it was.
Okay.
And you're back.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so as Shape PA members, if you're not members yet, we encourage you to be members. We have a lot of professional development opportunities for you, like these webinars tonight. We have our conference coming up, which we want to make sure you're a member and you join us for our state conference here, November 13th through 14th. So mark your calendars. Because that's coming up, and Chip will actually be there with us as a headliner as well. So Shape, we are all volunteer-run organization. Our mission is to provide all those opportunities for you, including advocacy and leadership. So we hope you're with us, and if you have any questions about becoming a member, we can help you become a member here today by joining or clicking on this link and joining us. So as we get started with tonight's webinar, I want to remind you that we are having this recorded, so we'll be able to share this with anyone who may have missed, or if you want to rewatch this. If you'd like any Act 48 credit, again, we can just send a chat in there and we can connect you with that. And I will be sure that everyone's muted just to minimize that background noise. And I will have the chat open today as well. As our speakers go through, we'll have about 15 minutes for each. They've been given some questions to address already. So if you want some clarification or if you have more questions as that comes up, feel free to ask that in the chat and I'll do my best to facilitate that. And all of our panelists, I will try to ask you those questions with any remaining time for your session. So I'll share this again too if we have time at the end, but our next webinar will be May 12th at 7 o'clock. And that's with Chantel. Our skills-based depression education is suicide prevention. So if you're interested with that, mark your calendars there with this special presentation from Erica's Lighthouse. So we hope you'll join us there as well. So without further ado, then I'd like to get started here with our first round of panelists. So I'd like to introduce to you Carmen. So Carmen Zangrilli is here with us tonight. He is an HP teacher at Riverfront Middle School in New Jersey. He's a recent Penn State grad as well. And he has a BS in kinesiology, and he's also coaching 3 sports across the middle and high school levels. So welcome, Carmen. We're so happy to have you. And I'll let you go ahead and get started with your presentation today.
Would you like me to share my screen for what I wrote down for the questions too?
Yes, you can, Carmen.
Okay.
And I can also share those slides as well. But if you want to go ahead and share that, you can.
Okay. Okay. And then everybody can see this, right? I assume it's loading, but all right, got a thumbs
Yep,
up.
that's great,
So,
thank you.
like Dawn said, I did just graduate from Penn State in May. Tomorrow is a year since I have graduated. It's crazy how it has gone so fast already. I have 34 days left of teaching in my first year. So excited, but it has gone fast, which is great. Currently coaching varsity softball, but coached middle school boys basketball and was the assistant girls varsity soccer coach, planning on returning to both of those next year. But the first question that I was asked to answer was how, nope, why was that paused? How do I go back? There we go. No, why did it say pause? Okay. How many people typically sit in on a teaching interview? So it depended. I had a couple interviews with schools in Philadelphia where the first interview was like a lesson to a group of students that lasted anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. And the principal would observe, and one of the physical education teachers would observe. But for the school that I ended up working at this year, I kind of broke it down into the three different interviews that I did have with them. So my first interview consisted of four or five faculty members. The principal was there, the vice principal was there, the director of curriculum was there, and two physical education teachers were in on that interview. And that lasted 30 to 45 minutes. Basic questions, my experience with student teaching, where I saw my strengths, where I saw my weaknesses, things I would add, fun games, fun tricks I would do to get students engaged. And then I have asked them about coaching opportunities to see if there was anything open at the middle school, who should I talk to get them at the high school level. That was the first round of interviews. And then the second interview, I went back to the school and did a 15-minute lesson with a seventh grade PE class. And they gave me the sport to do. They wanted me to do a baseball, wiffle ball little lesson, and they were in the midst of that. So kind of just created a fun game for them to do before they broke into a non-competitive and competitive style games. So every student felt like they could be involved and participate and not have to be with the super athletic kids if they didn't feel like they could compete in that level. And then my last interview was one-on-one with the superintendent. This lasted about an hour. And these questions were a little bit more in depth about my teaching philosophy, how I handle a classroom, how do I handle different types of behaviors, and more in depth on kind of picking my brain. But those were the three rounds of interviews I had with Riverfront School in Florence. And this all happened within a week. I had my first interview on a Monday and my last interview on a Thursday. So it was a very quick turnaround, which I appreciated because I was applying to other schools in this time, but hearing back quickly and having my second round and third round very quickly narrowed my focus down a lot and really made me focus on getting the job with them. And then I heard back that Friday, the day after my interview with the superintendent, that I got the job. So it was a very quick turnaround. It was very nice. I had it in before Memorial Day weekend. So within 3 weeks of me graduating, I had my first teaching job. Second question I was asked to answer was, how do they expect you to assess and track student progress in PE? The way we grade it at my school is based off a couple different criterias. Obviously, the middle school students have to walk themselves to class, so tardiness, being in the gym on time is a big thing where a lot of my students are losing points. Having their sneakers, obviously, our students aren't forced to get changed. The main attire is just sneakers is what we ask, but they are more than welcome to get changed. We do have a locker room for the boys and locker room for the girls that they're allowed to go to if they want to be changed. But I've had one student use the locker room to get changed for gym class this year. So it's not a very common thing for them. It's mainly just wearing the sneakers. being in their roll call spots, this is how we take attendance. If they're not sitting in their assigned spot on the gym floor, they lose points that way. During the 2-minute cardio warm up that we do every day around the basketball court, if they're not doing that correctly, they can lose points there. And then their activity in the game. If we're playing kickball, are they just standing in the field, letting the ball go past them, or are they actively trying to catch it, get somebody out? If they're running the bases, are they just staying on first? Or are they moving? So it's a true eye test when you gauge participation, but you clearly can see the difference of students who are participating and who are not. And this is on a check plus plus to check minus minus scale. Every time that they're either late or not participating, not following instructions, they lose a plus. So it's a roughly 15% of their grade every plus that is lost. So a check plus plus is 100%, and then the check plus is roughly an 85. Then a check is roughly a 70. So it goes down for every plus that they lose. And then the way we track our students' progression is 2 fitness tests. We do the pacer test and the plank test once in the first marking period and once at the end of the third marking period. This is how we get our SGOs for physical education. And the pacer test is just that cardiovascular test. We do it in the gym and for 1 class period, and then the second class period of our fitness testing is the plank test. And then we usually let our students have some free time after completing these because they are tough tests, especially the pacer test. The last question I was asked to answer was, did they ask about your experience with students with special needs or those less interested in PE? How do they expect you to support these students? I at Penn State had the opportunity to have a one-on-one class where I taught where I had a student who had autism, and it was every Friday we would create a 45 to an hour long gym class for him. He was awesome. He loved playing basketball. So depending on the sport we were doing that day, if he completed all the activities, we would end with 5 to 10 minutes of shooting hoops because that was his favorite physical activity. So we used that kind of like a goal for him to, if we were doing frisbee golf or playing baseball or throwing a football, if he completed everything else, we would always end with shooting hoops because he loved trying to make backwards 3-pointers. Even though it's unconventional, he was having fun moving around and getting his heart rate up, which ultimately is the goal that we are striving for as PE teachers. But during my first interview, I brought up my teaching with him, and I feel like if you have experience teaching students with special needs, it's a great skill and a great way to put yourself out there and stick out against your other candidates, because no matter what district you end up in, you will have students who have some type of learning disability or special needs. At Riverfront, I teach an adaptive PE class for a group of 8 4th to 6th graders. I have them every single day to end my day. We are located in the dance room at my school, but depending on the weather or the gym availability, I do normally have class in either the gym or outside. My students love going outside. I use the playground as our little reward if we're on task and following instructions and getting the goal of the day done. We go outside, but I feel if I didn't have that experience from Penn State, I might have not looked as such a strong candidate with my school, because I do teach students on the spectrum every single day, and their level of skill varies drastically. I have super high functioning kids with super low functioning kids all in the same class of 8. So creating those lesson plans that fit all 8 of them is a little difficult, but with my practice up at school, it made me a lot more comfortable and successful in those. And then when it comes to students who are less interested in PE, this will happen at every school district as well. It's either they don't like the sport that you're doing, or they just may not like sports in general, and that's not their forte. But my biggest thing with my students is getting them to try. I always remind them that there's not a scout here watching. There's no one here that's going to help you get to the NFL draft and MLB draft, whatever sport it may be. it's more just to gauge just having fun, right? Creating the difference between leaving here in a pile of sweat, but also leaving here acting like you had a little bit of exercise done. So getting to those students is always a struggle, but once you create a good relationship with these students and you create that rapport and they respect you and they trust you, they will give you a little bit more effort. So I feel like that's a big thing to touch on, is saying how you will create those relationships to then get their trust for them to then start participating. I know that was a little s- overspoken, a little run-on sentence, but once you create those relationships, they do try more. But also giving those students that autonomy to create lessons or create activities if you can. I know there are some days we do let our students have the choice of different activities. We kind of give them, like, split the gym in half and do half volleyball, half basketball, but then it's up to them what they're doing within those volleyball and basketball options. It may just be shooting hoops, but they may create their own little 3v3 game. And then in volleyball, they may just be doing keepy ups or actually starting to play a real game or ask for one of our inflatable beach balls to use. So it's a little bit more fun and not as intense as real volleyball. So those days are also a lot of fun for them, because when they feel like they're the ones in charge, so to speak, they do try a little bit more. And then lastly, always trying to relate it to something that they're doing outside of school that they're passionate about. One of my students who doesn't participate in Latin gym, but she runs track outside of school, always trying to remind her that I know this isn't the most intense activity, but this does help boost your cardiovascular fitness. So then when you are at track practice, you will be in better shape and getting better time. So just always trying to connect it and connect it to something that is their interest. That is very, very important. But that is all I have.
Okay, thank you so much, Carmen, for sharing all that. And I think, some of the takeaways from there are that as you gain so many experiences with a wide variety of students and kids with all different ability levels, that can really shine in an interview for you. And talking about some of those particular experiences and challenges that you've overcome can be really helpful. And I also like how, Carmen, you talked about developing relationships with your students. So, as you all are in your student teaching experiences and you're gaining all that, consider that. How are you connecting with students? Think about some of those stories you can share in the interview process as you go to interview. Okay, so thanks, Carmen. We really appreciate you.
No problem.
And next up then we have Chip Candy. So Chip, it's good to see you again here. And again, Chip is one of our headliner presenters again at Shape PA this year. So mark your calendars for that November 13th and 14th. We hope to see you all there. And Chip comes to us here with over 37 years of experience with HP Wellness and Adapted PE as well in New Jersey, and over 40 years of experience coaching. So he's now an adjunct professor and nationally recognized presenter. And Chip brings unmatched energy, enthusiasm, and expertise to all of his teaching and training opportunities. So we're happy to have him here with us tonight. And Chip, we're doing great on time so far. So you have about 10, 15 minutes here. The floor is yours, and we look forward to everything we can learn from you. Chip, I can also share. Would you like me to share my screen with the slides?
Sure, if you want. If you want,
Okay,
yeah.
I can do that here.
Okay.
And then I'll just go through.
Whichever one you come up with first is fine. So thank you for having me here. Thank you for the invitation. Carmen, congratulations on your first year. That's pretty cool. You're up in Florence. I was a Cinnaminson guy. So very cool. Glad that you got the job.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, common mistakes. So here's what I decided to do. So let me just give you just a quick starter here. I obviously interviewed a long time ago, so I'm not going to tell you about my interview process. I'm going to tell you about what happened, what I've been involved with. So I got to be on the other side of this for quite a while, for about the last maybe 10 years. I got to be in a superintendent interview, a principal interview, 2 or 3 teachers, all in physical education. So I'm going to give you kind of the other side now. Common mistakes to avoid during a health and PE interview. I'm not going to go through as many mistakes. Let's go to the positive. So pre-interview, make sure that what you send them written wise is tight. Get somebody to read your resume. Make sure that there are no issues on it and that it is something that is going to be really presentable and really good. It should be 1 page so that you get to the next round. You're not going to get to the next round unless you have a good resume. As soon as they see that you have a good resume, then they're going to invite you in for that next interview. So make sure that you do that. We lost a superintendent because he had grammatical errors on his resume. He was the person that we decided we definitely wanted. We thought this person was going to take that job. Then we thought later, another time, we had a principal, and the same thing. The principal had to send in a writing sample, and it was not good. He couldn't write, and all he had to do was get somebody to check it for him. Obviously, arrive on time, early. We actually had somebody came late. 3 strikes right there. Dress for success. Make sure that you get there and you're dressed properly. Dress well. This is a job that it's a professional job. So go in with, looking good, dress up, wear a tie if you're a guy, shake hands, smile, relax. All right. As soon as you walk in, own the room, walk in and shake hands with everybody who's in that room right away. The principal who got our job walked into a room where there were about, I would say 15 people in the interview process. She walked around and shook every single person's hand all the way around the table and then came back to the head. She already had us. She said, she introduced herself to every person. Smile and relax, obviously. When you answer the questions, answer the question. Don't get off target. Get right to the question. Whatever the question is, answer it directly. Answer it as succinctly as you can. And if you don't understand a question, don't be afraid to ask. In fact, there are times when people will actually ask a question that's a little funky, and you sit there and think, I have no idea what they're asking me. That they are probably asking you to ask them. So don't be afraid to ask. Take your time, obviously, in answering all the questions. And then don't be afraid to ask your own questions. At the end of the interview, a friend of mine just went through an interview, and he's literally in the process, and he's up to he's the final candidate. And at the end, he's had to say things like, what's this pay? How am I getting paid? What grades do you want me teaching? And so forth and so on. So ask your own questions so that you go out of there feeling comfortable too. Not only do they have to feel comfortable with you, but you've got to feel comfortable with them. Obviously, thank everyone in the room as soon as you're done, and always thank the secretary on the way out. Why? Because the secretary runs the building. So absolutely thank the secretary. The secretary is probably the way that I got my first job. I walked in with a suit and tie and handed her my resume, and the process was closed. She turned around to the principal and said, I think you want to interview this guy. He just came in with a suit and tie on, and it was the middle of the summer. And so she interviewed me. I was the last interview, and she had quite a few interviews. So the secretary is what got me my job. And then leave it all there and once you walk away, be done. Get ready for the next round. You probably already nailed it. You already know the phrase is, and I'll say this again, the phrase is, the hay's in the barn. You've done the work. Now just go in and just tell them what you know, and tell them what you do, and tell them how great you are. They're going to ask a lot of crazy questions, but it's make it a fun thing. Don't make it hard. Make it fun. Go in and enjoy the process, because it's a great process. The next question is, let's see, how do you prepare effectively for a health and PE interview? Okay, so first of all, you check out the entire school district. So go on their website and find out how many schools do they have, how big are the schools, how small are the schools. Find out as much information as you can about the school district before you go in. And obviously also find out, why is this position open? Is it somebody who's retiring? Are they firing somebody? Are you a sub? Whatever the situation is, find out why you're being interviewed? What is the situation? How are they doing it? There are a ton of places. I checked online. There are so many places that you can go online and get sample interview questions. There are literally, I went to one, AI threw out about 60 questions. They're all good to just go through, answer them in your head, but it's also fun. Just go find a friend, go for a walk and ask each other the questions and just shoot the questions and answers back and forth. Just so you get used to answering questions quickly and again, to the point. You know, if you're going overtime, tell your partner, the person who you're with, going, nope, sorry, way too long on that one. You didn't answer. Just answer the question. Get to the question. So absolutely get some of those questions first. Like do that first. They're all there. Or you don't even have to do anything. You don't have to make anything up. They're all on there. Take time to breathe and relax. Before you go in, relax, sit, get there early, relax, sit, and just go in easy. Again, just go in and do it at that point because you know that you've got all that, you've done stuff. And don't be afraid to tell them the stuff that you've done. Not necessarily that you're a great athlete. You know, oh, I'm an All-American in soccer. That's great, but that's not really going to help you in teaching. They want to know about how good a teacher you're going to be, not about your coaching and not about the sports that you played. They want to know about how good you are going to be at teaching the population. You're getting paid to teach, not to coach. Bring materials with you. If you have your resume, print it out. Print out your grades, your records, your transcript, the sample lesson plan, just so that you have them. When Andy Reid came into Philadelphia to get the job to be the head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, he almost brought a file box of information getting him ready to be able to be the coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was so prepared, it was ridiculous. Up to that point, nobody really knew who Andy Reid was. He was really an assistant, and he nailed it because he was not just prepared, he was over prepared. Know your stuff, know who you're stuffing, and know when to stuff them. All right, so what that means is read the room. If it looks like you're boring them, move on. If it looks like they really don't have a clue about physical education, then answer what they want to know. Especially like Carmen was saying about special education. If you've had any kind of work in special education and you've worked with kids in student teaching or in any other way that you've worked in your last 4 years, talk about that if that's what it seems like that's what their zone is. So try to figure out what is it that they want from me? How am I hitting what they want? Again, laugh, smile, relax. Look your best, shower, shave, dress well. If you want the job, look the job. First impression. The first impression that you make when you walk in is going to be an important one. Like you better walk in and you better make a really good first impression. And that just means, look good when you walk in the door. When you walk in the mirror, I mean, you look in the mirror and you know how you're looking. So come in and look good. You definitely don't be coming in scruffy. If your hair's blown all over everywhere, you use the bathroom and get your hair straightened away. Mine, that doesn't matter. All right, let's see. Next one, the follow-up process. Okay, so in the process in our school, when we just interviewed for a couple of physical education teachers. Again, thank everybody on the way out, but one of the most important things was to send a thank you note almost immediately. As soon as you are done, send a thank you note to the people who were in the interview room. If you were invited in by one person, let's say, normally the lead person is going to be the principal the first time. If you're invited in by the principal, then send an email or really a handwritten note, and you can even just go in your car, do it before you leave, and hand it to the secretary. Go back in, hand it to the secretary, and tell her to, give it to the principal. But a handwritten thank you note for, hey, thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to my drivel, and make sure that, you are being polite. Ask about the timetable, the process, and who's going to be in touch with you. So be very specific, like, hey, what is going to happen now? Like, not only what is the timetable, but who am I going to hear from? I've known so many people who have gone into interviews and then they don't hear anything at all. the districts can sometimes be really, really rude and not get back to the people who are interviewing. Make sure that you find out how how is that all going to work. Usually the process is the application and the resume obviously are first. If you get by that, then you get an interview. Once they get they get that first interview, they normally cut it down to 2 to 10 candidates, and then they cut that down even further. Then there's possibly a second interview. Most of the time, there will be a second interview with a different person. And a lot of times, this is where they'll either have the person who's in charge in the district, assistant superintendent, who is in charge of physical education, or health and physical education, or adapted, or whatever it is. They'll have that person plus the principal, plus maybe a teacher or two. And then that will cut it down again. They'll normally cut it down to 2 or 3. And then they're going to probably ask you to come in and teach a sample lesson. And then right after that, they're going to offer you the job, and which is the greatest part. The other thing that I think is important is if they ask you to come in and do a lesson, ask what you can do. They may give you something specific, but ask if they're, if you have a specialty, if you're really good at something, then do that. If not, make it a good lesson. Like, obviously make it a good lesson. One of the things that sold us and the last person we hired was she learned names almost immediately. She knew the names of the kids in the class. She asked them their names. She introduced herself. She had made them put names on their desks, and she addressed every single kid by their name. That was really, really a biggie. It was really a biggie. I mean, it showed. And the kids responded to it better than the other person who did almost the exact same lesson and was really, really good. And honestly, we wanted her. She was one of our students. She was one of my students, but we had to hire the other person. She did the little things. She had class management and just came off a lot better. After that, obviously, then there's normally an onboarding process, a whole bunch of new teacher stuff. There's going to be paperwork. You're going to have to sign about 40 different things. There's going to be a file full and a timetable. So Carmen's was really quick. That's pretty unusual to start on Monday and you have the entire thing done by Friday. A lot of districts would like to do that, but it's really hard to do because it's just hard to get people in and to get everything done. They've got other things to do. You're not, believe it or not, you're not going to be their only issue during the week. They've got other things to do. So it's a matter of fitting everything in. So the timetable is different. It could be extremely fast. It could be very slow. But in Carmen's situation, he was applying to other schools, and this happens a lot. So if you are applying to other schools, let them know that. That puts a little pressure back on them. Like, hey, you ain't the only dog in the town here. I got other things going. Like, there are other irons in the fire here. I'm just letting you know I am applying to other places. And so the sooner I would know, the better. But overall, just one last thing, and that is keep it as positive as possible. Make it fun. Don't just relax. Don't make it a high pressure thing. It's not a high pressure thing. The principal and I, when we interviewed for not only the health position in my school, but also my position, we laughed almost through the whole thing. We were just laughing with the person. We wanted the person to be loose, relaxed. We wanted their best. We were not looking to put any pressure on anybody who walked in the door. We wanted it to be as fun and as easy, as relaxed as possible, because honestly, that's the way we're going to hire somebody good, is to see them in their best way. So they're looking for your best. They're not looking to make it hard on you. They really aren't. They're not trying to give you any trick questions. They're not going to try to give you any hard questions. This is not like trying to get a Chick-fil-A where they're literally trying to trip you up because you've got to be perfect to own a Chick-fil-A. A friend of mine just went, 10-second story, a friend of mine just went to get a Chick-fil-A. He was meeting with the 2 district heads, and this was the last big, huge interview before he went down to Atlanta to interview with the heads of the entire corporation. They said, why don't you just go use the bathroom? We need to talk. He went into the bathroom. They had planted trash on the ground. He went in and just haphazardly picked the trash up and threw it away. He found out it was a plant. They were seeing how good he was at cleaning up and how good he was at just seeing things that were out of place. That's wild. They're not trying to do that to you. They're trying to make it as easy as possible on you. So just have fun with it. So yeah, I think that's all I got.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chip. Thanks so much We really appreciate all your insight, and you bring to the table to this webinar, like you mentioned, all of your experience as being a part of that interview committee, and you've hired several people. So thank you for all of that. And I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that this webinar is brought to you by our Future Professionals committee as part of Shape PA. And as we were looking for our panelists, we have a variety of new hires and people just starting their career, and Chip, you obviously have a lot of experience and insight on both sides of the table, so thank you for bringing all that. I appreciate that. And
Thank you to Maya for inviting me in.
yes, thank you. It's so great to have you. So that brings us then to our next panelist, and that's Dave Schmidt. So Dave, he's been a past president of Shape PA, and he is a department chair at North Allegheny here in PA, and he has over 30 years experience of teaching, coaching, curriculum leadership. He champions meaningful PE and shares nationally recognized strategies to promote lifelong wellness. And again, Dave's been a part of the interview process himself and on hiring committees. So we want to welcome Dave here tonight as well. And Dave, we're doing great on time here. Again, about 10, 15 minutes. We'll shoot for around 6:45-ish to wrap up. And I can continue to share my screen if that's okay, unless you had some other slides that you would like to share.
No, that works for me. That's fantastic.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for the kind introduction. I want to reiterate before I forget what Chip said. I think what he left with is so important. I've been in a lot of interviews over the years. Not myself. I'm fortunate I haven't interviewed in the last 30 years as a teaching candidate. As I've been at the same place, but I've been on the other side of the table for superintendent interviews, principal interviews, teacher interviews at every level, and they want you to succeed. The biggest mistake I see over the time is people coming in nervous, coming in being very forceful and trying to establish themselves, and it just doesn't work. Those people want you to relax, want you to enjoy yourself, and they just want to get to know you and get a feel for you, especially in the first interview. So I think Chip did a great job of pointing that out, and I completely agree with what he said. Questions I always ask to share with you are: were you required to bring materials such as a resume, e-folio, lesson plan? Whether they require it or not, that's an absolute must. You need to come in there prepared. It's a chance for you to highlight what you do and what you're passionate about with the staff. It gives you some talking points. It might buy you a little time. You're asked a question, you're not quite sure. Feel free to slow down, take your time. Look at your notes. In the many, many, many interviews over the years, one of the best ones I can remember was someone who's now a colleague, who he came in and laid his papers on the table, and if we had a question, he already had an answer typed up for it. It took us off guard at first, but it just showed that how well prepared that person was and how dedicated they were. So have something with you. A lot of people are bringing in enormous portfolios. I don't know that that's the best thing, because as we pass that around the table, we're leafing through this big 3-ring binder, and we might not be listening to you as well as we'd like to during that time. We want to see what you have, but I think the best thing I've seen over the years is people bringing in a small binder, calling ahead, finding out how many people are going to be in an interview, and bring a binder for each person. Just a small folder with a cover page, talk about who you are, maybe QR code so they can scan, go to your website, look at how you are with electronics, sample lesson plans, your resume, things you've done outside that set you apart from other teachers. Well, it's true that you have 4 years of education. So is everybody else who's going to be an interview. So what have you done to set yourself apart? How have you volunteered? What have you done outside of that? So bring those materials, bring something with you. If you have done something else and people have shared with you, maybe bring it. We had a teacher was a teacher from another district, because we were fortunate in our district of North Allegheny. We hire a lot of people who were already experienced from other school districts. And they brought with them a book that their students heard they were leaving because they were moving with their spouse, and they published a book for that teacher of remembrances, and they brought that book and shared it with us, and that was really powerful. That teacher's also now a colleague. But those can provide a concrete way to highlight your experience, your philosophy, your creativity, something tangible that you can leave behind. So after you leave, and it's a tight race, and a lot of times it is. There's a lot of great candidates out there, but we need more. So thank you for doing this. As they're debating, they can make that decision with you. Can you get back one more time on that last slide, so make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, I'll just stick here for a while, I guess. Oh, there you go. Thank you. And then that lesson structure, your best lesson in your lesson structure, that can show that what your focus is. You know, the way I happen to structure my lessons is very different than a lot of other teachers. So by saying, hey, I'm going to take the first 5 minutes of my class, kids are going to come in and go for a walk and talk. We're going to have a topic of the day. They're going to get to know each other. While they're getting to know each other, I'm walking around talking to kids, taking attendance, not lining them up, calling a roll call, but taking the time to get to know them and see their faces. That goes a long way. The administration wants to know that you care about kids and get to know them individually. And so that lesson format, having it outlined, that you have a warm up, you have a get to know you period, you have a cool down where you have lesson closure. Those things and what you do during those times is very important. And you can really share your philosophy through that lesson form. Thank you for going back. I'm ready to move on. All right. How important is it to know the knowledge of your current trends in PE and wellness, such as social emotional learning, mindfulness? Could not be more important. Everybody comes into physical education interview. You know, we reflect back on our PE experiences, and while they're all different, we judge them by what we've experienced. Those interviewers in the room are no different. Like the other past two interviewers have said, there's going to be principals in there, other teachers, department chairs. At our district, you usually go up and finish off with the assistant superintendents. I'm in a very large district, but they may have had past bad experiences in the past. They may have had very positive experiences. I know administrators that I work with that are great, very compassionate, have had some bad PE experiences. So as they came in and were new to our district, I welcome the opportunity, to have a walking meeting with them and just tell them what our philosophy is. I've interviewed that way many times, just sharing what my personal philosophy is, as a department, what our philosophy is. So like Chip said, try to find out ahead of time, search their websites, Google people, find out what they believe in. And are you coming into a sports-based curriculum or something that's more focused on meaningful PE? We have our entire curriculum reviews online. We go through curriculum review every year and we stand up and say, hey, this is what research we've done. This is what we believe in. And that way, hey, this is a place I want to be. Maybe this isn't a place I want to be. Maybe it's my B choice, but at least know what you're getting into before you get into it. Showing knowledge is topics like meaningful PE. That's my thing that has changed my career over the last few years. Really, I've always loved teaching. This is taken to the next level. Mindfulness, inclusive practices. As we heard earlier, as Carmen noted, not everybody loves sports. If you're teaching just about sports, that's going to be a knock against you. They want to know, how are you going to connect with kids who might have had bad experiences in sports, and you're going to still let them know that they're an important person, and there's other ways that they can enjoy physical activity besides a competitive sport. So we're going to talk about that and make sure you share that with them. Make sure they know you're an educator who's committed to the diverse needs of today's students, because you're going to experience all sorts of different issues, from anxiety, depression, mental health issues, to kids who might appear to be perfect and doing all the right things, but yet they're still doubting themselves behind the scenes. Have questions prepared. Once you look into the district, have a list of questions you want to ask. If they ask you if you have any questions and the answer is no, I'm all good, that's not a really positive answer. You want to have questions prepared. You want to get to know the district better. So, what's your philosophy? What's this position going to look like if it does come up? What are the major initiatives that you're trying to do to make your program better? Then you can follow up that with, oh, hey, here's something I've done in that area where I might be able to help you out. But I think that's another great way to go about it. And the next one, I think a couple of things, I hate to say anything, one thing is the most important, but I think the relatability is the number one thing. People want somebody who they're comfortable with, somebody who's a people person. As a teacher, you need to be a people person who relates well to others, who likes people genuinely, who's going to go around and be that handshaker. Go out of the way to get to know people, who can connect comfortably, authentically with staff, students, the broader school community. You're going to be pitching what you sell, not only to the kids, but to their parents, to the administration. You're a grassroots advocate for everything we do in that position. You need to come across that way in the interview process. I love Chip's idea about asking each other questions going into it, so you get comfortable with those answers. Additionally, during sample lessons or interactions, because we're going to in our interview process, you're going to come in, you're going to just answer questions. They're trying to whittle things down. The second round in our district is going to be a sample lesson. They're going to give you a day ahead of time, tell you the topic. You're going to come in and plan your lesson, teach actual students at the grade level with principals and other teachers from that building or myself watching that lesson. How do you go about it? That matters a lot. Clear communication, adaptability, because you don't know who's coming into that classroom, and you have to be able to monitor and adjust the students in the classroom. Have a passion for student growth, leave a lasting positive impression. Know your why. I graduated from IUP undergrad and Slippery Rock grad school, and now Randy Nichols over there is his big thing. Know your why. Why did you become a physical education teacher? Why do you care about being a health teacher? And share your philosophy and your mission and your vision with the people. If they don't ask you that question, so find a way to work it in. And you don't want to go off topic, but you also want them to know that this is something you really care about, and when I think back to all the different interviews we've done, when we've asked a question regarding that, you're like, oh, because I like sports. Well, that's great, but you need more than that. More than that to it. What about working with kids gets you excited and makes you passionate? That enthusiasm come across, strong communication skills, and there's a whole list there. I don't need to read it to you, but I think the little things. Can you use technology? Can't right now. That's a problem. Practical experience. What have you done? Collaboration, teamwork. If you haven't done a lot yet and you're struggling, go out there and find some organizations to get a coaching job, to get a summer job where you're working with kids. Build your resume. And then just simply, and this goes back to what Chip said again, and I think we come from a very similar background in our experiences, but relax and be your authentic self. They want to get to know you. If you come in and say you're this, this, and this, and this, and then you end up getting the job, that could lead to problems down the road. So you want to make sure that you are who you say you are, and just relax and be yourself. And that's what they really want to do, is get to know you. Whether you get the job or not, or get the second interview or not, you don't know what's going on. You don't know who you're up against. So don't let it knock you down. Don't let it make you lose your confidence. For all you know, they had an agenda before those interviews started. It happens. I hate to say it, but it does happen. There might have been somebody who's come in with a lot more experience than you have. I've interviewed a lot of great first-year candidates, but I've got a 8th or 9th or 10th year candidate who comes in, is knocking it out of the park. We've had teachers of the year come in to interview with us, and obviously they have a lot more experience than someone come out of school. So, realize there's other people out there that are also good. Even if you're very good, it's not just about you, it's about candidate pool. So keep that in the back of your mind. Don't take it as personal if you don't get the offer or the second interview. That's all I've got.
Okay, yes, thank you, Dave, and thank you again for your insights from, like you said, both sides of the table. I mean, you've been on plenty of hiring committees, so you were able to share a lot of things. And I like how when he was speaking about your why, Chip mentioned about how there are several different questions out there. There are so many interview questions that you certainly can go down the list and practice and be prepared. And then along with what Dave said with your why, I like to always have 3 or 4 talking points that I want to kind of bring up in the interview when you're on that side of the table and interviewing. Think about those challenges that you've overcome and that why, what inspires you, and how are you inspiring your students? And work those talking points in so it can really reflect your why and what you bring to that district and that table. And then another thing, Dave, you mentioned and Chip as well, is that relatability. And as you're interviewing, and as I said on the other side of as a hiring committee, I was looking for people that I could work well with and that I knew were going to be great colleagues. Think about what you can bring to the table there, and relax and be your authentic self. And And Dave, you brought up a new point about if you don't get the job, don't consider it a failure on your part. A lot of times it is luck and good timing, but you can certainly be prepared and bring all your qualifications there as well. But as
Can
you
I add
move,
one more thing quickly? You
yeah,
made me think about was one of the questions we always ask, or at least almost every time I've been a part of an interview is there anything you wish we'd asked that we didn't? So I love your points about having some talking points lined up and, so even if they don't touch on it, you can ask a question, say, really, I wish you would have asked me this, and go ahead and answer it at the end if you have time.
yeah, that's a great point because they might ask too, do you have any questions for us? Or that's where you can say, I would have liked to speak about this. Excellent. Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Dave. Okay, so we're coming to the end here. We have about just under 10 minutes. So I'd like to introduce you to Ali. And Ali, this is my first time meeting you. So I want to welcome you here and thank you for being a part of this panel. Allie's a recent Ursinus College graduate, and she is now teaching at Howe Middle School in New Jersey, where she brings a lot of her health and exercise physiology knowledge and her combined collegiate basketball experience to her students and her classes each day. So thank you for being here, Allie. And again, we have just under 10 minutes. So you have the floor here, and I will continue to share these slides for you as we go through. And if you have any remaining questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And toward the end here, I'll also share an email address where you can send any remaining questions as we bring it to a close here. So, Allie, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Liv, for asking me to join this. I'm super excited. So, yeah, I graduated from Ursinus last May and then got hired in Howell in May as well. I worked May and June actually at an elementary school in Howell and then transferred this year to middle school. So, yeah, how many questions are typically asked in an interview and how in-depth should your responses be? So it depends on what level interview you're at, but you can typically expect about 8 to 12 questions. Again, that might vary whether you're in a virtual interview, it might be a little bit shorter than when you're meeting with the superintendent, but we'll get to that later. But you can expect a mix of questions, behavioral questions, situational, hypothetical, philosophical, what's your teaching philosophy, values-based, what you might expect your culture to be at school, and role-specific questions. And then finally, just wrap up. When it comes to answering questions, you want to use the Goldilocks rule. I know other presenters have said it too. You get to the point. You don't want to be too short with it, but also not too long. Each response should be about 1 to 2 minutes. I provided an example just so I could show kind of what the steps for answering a question might look like and how that might help. But a typical question asked is, how do you handle classroom management in a PE setting? So how I always prepared for answering questions is I would briefly describe what my overall approach was, and then give a specific strategy and share a short example of it working in practice, whether that was through student teaching or what other experience you may have. So an answer for that could be, I approach classroom management with a student-centered mindset, aiming to establish routines and expectations for both the students and their parents to understand and follow. This allows for mutual respect, responsibility, as well as increases time on task. I start each class with a warm-up and use consistent signals like the start of music playing. I assign student roles to build accountability and rotate students to lead the stretches and warm-up, which helps other students model good behavior. This could also be answered in other questions. Another typical question is, how do you differentiate instruction for students with varying physical abilities? You could simply say, I collaborate with special ed staff and adapt activities by modifying equipment, rules, goals. If you want to use an example for basketball, a student with limited mobility might not be able to use a regular size basketball. You can use a lighter ball, a lowered hoop, while still having them participate with other peers. So there's other examples for that, but short and sweet. Don't get off task with that. Answer the question that they asked, like everyone else was saying. The second question, I know this looks like a lot, but I tried to be as helpful as I could. So what is the general structure of the interview process? So first, obviously, sending in the application, resume, letter of introduction to the superintendent of the district that you're applying to, teaching credentials, whatever you have, right? I know when I was applying for jobs, it was a letter from my school because I had not yet gotten my certification. So whatever you have, submit. Second, this is sometimes happens, sometimes not. I think Carmen mentioned his interview process was short. It was sweet within the week. That was similar to mine. I interviewed at Howell. It was the only district I interviewed at, and it was in April before I graduated. And it was all in with a week where I started an interview process and then got hired. So it depends on the district whether you have a virtual interview or not. But sometimes it's used as a preliminary step to assess communication skills, basic qualifications, overall interest. Mine was with the supervisor of health and PE in the district, but it could vary with whatever district you're applying to. And then some common questions might be, why do you want to teach PE? What are the PE standards in NJ or whatever state you're applying to? How do you handle classroom management? How do you define success? How do you assess student progress? And then can you give an example of a successful lesson or unit you've taught? A lot of these questions are also asked in other interviews after, but they're basically trying to get to know you and assess how you can communicate and how you present yourself. After that, you go to an in-person panel interview. This is the core of the hiring process. It typically involves a panel of administrators, PE department staff, and around 3 to 5 people. Similar questions are asked as an virtual interview. Question categories can include instructional strategies, how you differentiate instruction, how you create an inclusive environment, classroom management, how you collaborate with other teachers and staff, scenario-based questions, how to handle disruptive behavior, resistance, limited space equipment, and then with today's day and age, how you incorporate technology into the gym or into your health classroom. Then comes a demo lesson. Again, I'm following the interview process that I had. The steps might be different depending on the district, but my next one was a demo lesson. You'll be asked to teach a sample PE class. Most times ahead of time, they'll let you know what grade and how many kids, but you should also find out what kind of students you'll be teaching so that you can be prepared to differentiate instruction for different behaviors and abilities. It's okay to ask. It's a great idea to ask. I know I did that so that I made sure I was completely prepared for the situation that I was putting myself into so that I could reach every student that I was teaching. I didn't leave anyone out. So don't be afraid to ask questions. It's super, super important and shows them that you want to be as prepared as you can. So side note for that. You'll be evaluated on lesson planning, engagement, safety, how you manage your classroom, use of assessment, and just overall interaction with the students. I know it might be nerve-wracking to do a demo lesson, but it's how you interact and how you make sure everyone is safe and engaged that they're really looking for. To this demo lesson, it's super important to bring a lesson plan for whatever lesson that you're teaching for whoever you think might be there. So I know I brought like 5 printed out lesson plans just in case there are more people there so that everyone has them that's observing you. And then I know I met with my administrator, the principal at the school that I was getting hired for after the demo lesson. So sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And then the final interview, like people have mentioned already, it's usually with the superintendent or assistant superintendent. And you'll be asked more about your teaching philosophy, your long-term goals, what you expect your school culture to look like, and overall contributions to coaching, running clubs, extracurriculars. So, yeah. And then the last question, did they ask any behavioral or scenario-based questions? For example, handling student engagement, large classes, special needs? Yes. So behavioral and scenario-based questions are very common in interviews because they reveal to whoever's interviewing you how you can handle real-world teaching situations like student behavior and safety. So I kind of wrote some common questions that I was asked or questions that I know sometimes happen in interviews. 1, tell me about a time you had to modify a lesson for a student with a disability. Use as much experience as you have to answer these questions. Some might be harder, and I'll give some tips at the end, but that's a big one. 2, describe a situation where you successfully motivated a student who isn't disengaged or unwilling to participate. I want to reiterate what Carmen was saying. It's super important to build relationships with your students and get to know them, and that will create a better relationship with you and them and motivate them itself. Describe a time when you had to manage a large group of students with minimal equipment or space. How did you keep the class organized and effective? I know if the school you have or the school you're working at has a gym that's also a cafeteria, also an auditorium, a lot of things take your gym from you. So how to handle those situations, whether you have to go to a class to teach in the classroom, what might you do? I mean, you could have them do standing exercises and go outside for a walk if it's nice, but how do you handle those situations? And you're teaching a health class about substance abuse and a student makes an inappropriate or insensitive comment. How do you respond? Now, when you're applying, you can see what the job is for. I know I teach at a middle school. I know Carmen teaches at a middle school. Middle school kids have a lot of behavior and they like to be inappropriate sometimes. So how can you prepare yourself when going into an interview? Like people have said, get to know what your school you're going to, what grade you might be applying for, and how might you handle those behaviors. The pro tip I wanted to mention, always tie your answers back to student safety, engagement, inclusion, and professionalism. And another thing, I forget who mentioned it before, but if you don't understand the question, you can ask for clarification. That is fine. And then one thing that my supervisor helped me with, if you don't know an answer or you need a second to think, bring a water bottle with you and simply ask to take a quick sip. It buys you time to think of an answer in your head. And it does help. It lets you calm down for a second if you're a little flustered. But yeah.
That's great, Ali. Thank you so much for sharing some of those new and current questions that you were asked. We really appreciate that. And even in your interview process, when you talked about the virtual interview, I just had a student who they did a video where the answer or the question popped up on their screen and they were timed and they could see the time ticking down and they answered the question via video to send to the hiring committee. And they had, I think, 2 chances to get that video in. So I'm not sure if you experienced that, but that's out there as well. So we appreciate you sharing, and Carmen as well, kind of those current questions and experiences that you've had in pursuing your first jobs here. So thank you so much. Well, we are just over by a few minutes, so I think we made pretty good time here, and you all shared a lot of great things. I'd like to send another thank you out to Chip and Ali and Dave and Carmen for being here with us tonight, and a shout out to our FPAC, our Future Professionals Committee, for putting this all together. We're really proud of you for reaching out to all of these outstanding professionals and for everything that you brought here tonight. I shared in the group chat an email address that if you would like to submit any other questions at info@shapepa.org, you can email us those and we'll get those to our panelists if you would like some more answers. But thank you all for being here tonight. Again, mark your calendar for that next webinar, and we hope to see you all at our Shape PA conference November 13th and 14th this year. So thank you again for being here, everybody. We hope you have a great evening.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
you.
Chip.
for
Good to have you.
hosting. Thank
And-
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Quick,
you for
can I
having
give a
me.
quick shout out? Chance is in here and he has put together maybe one of the greatest lineups I have ever seen for a state conference in my entire life. Excluding me, it is incredible who he's got. It is going to be amazing. So
Including you, Chip, including you.
you can get to this state conference. I can't wait to go just to see everybody. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like it. He's got some of the best, like people I would just go see. Like I drive 250 miles just to go see him present. I mean, they're amazing. So yeah, good job, Chance. See there? See, he probably left already. He's probably already up. No, he's still
He
maybe.
said thanks, Chip. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Hi,
Have a good
thank
night.
you, everybody.